All right, welcome back to Grok Talk, brought to you by the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers and the bloggers at granitegrok.com. Be sure to check this and past programs out on Spreaker Radio, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. We're also on YouTube and Ustream, and of course at granitegrok.com. We'd like to thank all our previous guests. Earlier today, Aaron Day was here with us, of course, talking about the New Hampshire Senate race. Roger Wilkins, who was just here talking about VA reform. Time to move forward to our next guest. This is Jim Simpson, investigative journalist and author. And this is probably a great week to have him on because there's a lot of talk about refugees and Syrians and the Middle East, and he's written a book about it, sort of. Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning, Steve.
Great. Thanks for hanging on the line there. So before we get into the specific, obviously the Syrian refugees is the huge issue this week. Give us a little bit of background about the Refugee Resettlement Program in general so that people have some context for what's been going on in the last couple of months.
Well, every year we bring into the country about 70,000 people from all over the world as what they call refugees. And these people claim to have been persecuted for their religious or personal beliefs in their home country, and they apply, and usually to the UN, because the UN has pretty much taken over the selection of refugees into the United States, and they're supposedly vetted carefully, and then they are sent to the United States, and the State Department reviews the application, selects them, and then hands off those names to private resettlement contractors, which are misnamed voluntary agencies. We call them VOLAGs. And those groups decide amongst themselves where to place these refugees throughout our country. And they do it to a large extent completely outside of the public eye. They're not transparent at all. And while they are supposed to consult with local, state and local government on placement of refugees, in practice they rarely, if ever, do. And the consequence is that we have been increasingly inundated with hundreds of thousands of third world immigrants, and they receive and stay on welfare at rates far in excess of American citizens. And the VOLAGs make huge amounts of money resettling refugees, so they have been incentivized by the government to get as many refugees in as they possibly can. And so when this whole Syrian quote-unquote crisis came along, they began championing not bringing in a few thousand Syrians, but bringing in as many as 200,000 Syrians. And lest anybody say that we are not a welcoming country, the United States is the largest resettlement country in the world. We take more refugees than every other resettlement country combined, and we also spend a lot of money helping refugees in place. Currently there's 4 million refugees in the Syrian refugee camps in Jordan, Turkey, and Lebanon, and we are spending a lot of money helping them over there, but the voluntary agencies salivating at the thought of making between $5,000 and $10,000 a head, add up the numbers, want to bring in as many as 200,000 Syrians, which the FBI director, the director of national intelligence, FBI's counterintelligence, counterterrorism chief, and even the Homeland Security secretary have said these people cannot be vetted. And so that's where we are with the current situation. But the Refugee Resettlement Program on the whole has come under sharp criticism recently simply because we have been so inundated with so many refugees in so many places. You guys know all about that. You know what's been going on in Manchester. You know what's been going on around the state. You see that impacting your municipalities every day. A lot of people don't realize just how serious it is. They don't realize what's been going on. Like, for example, in Manchester, the 82 different languages spoken at Central High School and the huge negative burden that places on the school administrators to maintain quality education when they have to figure out how to teach people that speaks 82 different languages.
Now, a couple of things. I know there's issues with assimilation. There's issues with getting them off of taxpayer support. But now, if I remember correctly, the Volags are supposed to help with some of that because that's what they're getting paid for, but they don't really do that?
Well, what they are supposed to do and let me give you a little list here, what it says that they promise refugees: a furnished home, help with rent, health care, nutritious, affordable food, English language classes, help building job, computer, and financial literacy skills, education for their children, social services, and community support, legal services towards residency and citizenship. I mean, these are all things that they promise to refugees. Now, what they do in practice is they put a refugee in public housing, or arrange housing for the refugee. They help the refugee sign up for all the different welfare benefits that they receive, which are all the welfare benefits available to American citizens, and then some additional ones besides. And then once they've worked with them for a few months and seen that that they've gotten themselves established, comfortable, and all those things lined up, they just leave them. And then it's left to the community to assimilate these people, to see that they continue to get the support that they get, and the Volags just leave. And the whole system is rigged, really. It's a deceptive situation. For example, refugees, they're supposed to leave them when they're self-sufficient, quote-unquote self-sufficient. However, if you look in the regulations in the Office of Refugee Resettlement under the Health and Human Services Department, the definition, it's a very special definition of self-sufficient. A refugee is self-sufficient as long as that person is not receiving cash assistance. They can still be receiving food stamps, housing subsidies, Medicaid, and even supplemental security income, yet they're supposedly considered to be self-sufficient because they're not getting welfare cash assistance.
And they're on this assistance for quite a few years after they get here, correct?
Well, for example, the Middle Eastern refugees since 2008, of those 90% remain on food stamps, 68% remain on cash subsidies. Those are Middle Eastern refugees. Over the last 5 years, of all the refugees that have come in, 56% are on Medicaid, 47% are on cash assistance, 74% are on food stamps, and 23% on public housing.
That's a lot of compassion.
It sure
well,
is.
So
I wish somebody would show me that kind of compassion. And there's additional things as well. There's special grants, for example, for a home-based child care business. If a Somali woman has her own children at home, she's taking care of them. She speaks the language. Some of her neighbors have kids. They want to leave them off with her. She applies for a special grant, and presto, she's a home-based child care business. And she gets a grant from the government to conduct that business. Others get help with their savings account, a one-to-one matching grant from the federal government. If you're a refugee and you establish a savings account, the government will match every dollar you save, dollar for dollar, up to $2,000.
That's pretty nice.
It's pretty nice. I could use that kind of money.
Yeah, whatever happened to attracting the best and brightest from around the world that would come here and contribute to our society and contribute to our wealth and our tax base? These people, most of them, are never going to contribute. And I believe there should be a threshold. You come to this country, you get nothing, zip, zero, nada out of any kind of benefit for 5 years until you've paid some taxes. Yeah. That'll make a difference. And these organizations that are settling them, some of these are Catholic charities, but they're not out there fishing for Catholics and Protestant, or Orthodox Christians from these countries. Supposedly, refugees are people who are persecuted. We don't bring Christians in, do we?
No, we don't. And in fact, it's very interesting because the UN High Commissioner for Refugees selects most of these refugees, and they are heavily influenced by the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which is the second largest organization in the world that you've probably never heard of. It's comprised of 56 Muslim countries, and the Palestinian Authority has a major influence within the UN, and the UN selects most refugees. So, not surprisingly, in recent years, most refugees, and especially with this president's proclivities, most refugees coming to the United States are people from Muslim countries, and most of those are Muslims. We resettled a little over 2,000 Syrian refugees last year. 53 were Christians.
Wow. And by the way, isn't that where the Visit All 57 comes from?
Sorry? Oh, yeah, right. One from each country, yes.
No. As in Obama visited all 57 states.
Yeah, that's true. 57 states, that's right. He was confusing states with his buddies in the 57 Muslim countries, yeah.
All right, Jim, stay on the line. We're going to take a really short break. We'll be right back. We're talking to Jim Simpson. Stay tuned.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.